the sickness of our ummah is that we no longer listen to the Quran. In other words, in our souks, the Quran now is played like background music. You will hear A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. You will hear Quran now in the souks of all the Muslim countries. You will hear the Quran even in the souk. And if you hear it here, then tell the people to stop playing it. Because the souk is not the place for Quran. In fact, it's makruh to recite the Quran in the souk, except for talib ilm who's doing muraja'ah. And you can look at the books of fiqh. I'm not making that up. And I was once trying to do a transaction and somebody had a CD of Quran that he was trying to sell. And I asked him, please turn it off. And he said, why? And I said, because Allah says, إِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. If you hear the Quran, listen to it and be silent. And I can't make a business transaction if you've got Quran playing. And he said, is it wajib? See, this is a sickness. This is a sickness. It means there's a deep loss of adab. And this is what's happened in our ummah. We have lost adab to the book of Allah. I'll close it up now. We've lost adab to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now from the adab of the book of Allah is that you listen to it when it's recited. And you're silent. Now in the Quran it says, لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي. Don't raise your voices over the voice of the Prophet. The ulama, many of them have said it includes when hadith is being recited. Now there's a principle in tafsir mafhum al-awla, which is the even more strong. Like when Allah says, don't say to your parents, uff. That's the least thing you can do. It obviously means not hitting them or going beyond. If we're commanded to be silent when the Prophet ﷺ is speaking, then what is the commandment when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is speaking, which is the kalam of Allah, which is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we hear the book of Allah, we should go silent. If you don't understand it, then be silent anyway. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. In order that you will be shown rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is the unending miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the book that enriches those who have no wealth. It dignifies those who are abased and subjugated. It gives nourishment to those who are spiritually malnourished. It is a book that brings light and life to the dead and the blind. Summun bukmun umyun fahum la yubsirun. Allah says about them, they are blind, deaf and dumb, and they do not see. They're deaf, they can't hear. And they can't speak, they can't articulate, and they can't see. And the Muslim is somebody who is listening attentively to the signs of Allah, seeing the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the signs are both things that we see with the eyes, as-sam'a wal-basar wal-fu'ad. We see with the eyes, we hear with the ears, and we understand in our hearts. The Muslims are people of intellect. They're not people of stupidity and idiocy. Muslims are people of intellect. And the Quran is a book that demands deep thought. It is not a book for simplistic, for just a book that, no, it absolutely demands from us that we think. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بَلْ نَقْذِفُ بِالْحَقِّ عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ فَيَدْمَغُهُ فَإِذَا هُوَ زَاهِقٌ. We thrust this Quran against falsehood and all forms of truth against falsehood, and it is overcome. Now there's a modern translation that says, and it smashes out their brains, which that's a gross mistranslation of Quran, because damagha, although in its one of the meanings is isabat al-dimagh, to strike the brain. That striking does not mean smashing it physically out, which is a way that a lot of modern Muslims would like to finish arguments, by smashing out their opponent's brains. No, we are people of burhan, and the proof is, if you read the ayahs that follow that verse, you will see that they all asking about, do you think there's more than one God in creation? Haven't you looked at the heavens and the earth? It's using intellectual proofs to show these people. In other words, yadmaghuhu means that it overwhelms their intellect until they have to admit that it is the truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Muslims have never been afraid of open debate and open discourse. The Muslims have never been afraid of open debate and open discourse. Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, he debated the atheists in the masjids. He debated people that didn't believe in the ba'ath. This is what the Muslims, because they were not afraid of any forms of falsehood, because they had the truth. But because we're so distant from the book of Allah, we actually fear now all of this falsehood that is out there. Wallahi idha ja'a al-haq, zahaq al-batil, inna al-batila kana zahuqa. If the truth comes, falsehood vanishes. Falsehood is vanishing. The Prophet, when Sayyidina Ali, he said, "Fitnun ka qat'a layl mudlim." There are afflictions like a dark black night. And then Ali karamallahu wajha radiallahu anhu said, Mal khalasu yawma idhin ya Rasulullah. What is the way out on that day? He said, Kitab Allah, the book of Allah. Fihi naba'u ma qabrakum wa khabru ma ba'dukum wa hukmu ma bainakum. It has the information of those who went before, news about those who will come after, and it is a judgment between you. The Prophet ﷺ said, Man da'a ilayhi hudiya ila sirat al-mustaqim. Aqulu qawli hadha wa astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa li sa'ir al-muslimin wa assalamu alaykum.